Hi friends, so my name is Adrian and I'm the face and artist behind Pink Mew Crochet, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. So for today's video, I decided that I'm going to be ranking all 20 of my crochet patterns from my least favorite to my most favorite. I thought it would be a really fun way to kind of revisit all of the patterns that I've written over the last 2 years and kind of see where I started and where I'm at now. I'm going to be ranked on my own personal preference, and I have a feeling that a lot of you are not going to agree with me. So if you want, by the end of the video, you can let me know what your list would look like if you had to rank my patterns. It would be super fun to kind of just see how I thought about my own patterns. I know everyone has a different opinion. And yeah, let's just get started. So coming in at number 20 is Augustus, my little winter bear pattern. I feel so bad for putting him at number 20, but he, in terms of my technical skill, is maybe not at the highest. He is super cute. I made Augustus as part of a little bundle, which we'll, see the rest of them as we're going through the video. But it was a little Christmas bundle that I ended up making during that season, and I feel like while he's cute, he's just not really my favorite. He kind of just fits into that bar of he's just a bear with little earmuffs, and he's kind of just not the most impressive or showing off the skills that I have, but I still have a lot of love for him because he is super cute. He just had to be at the bottom, and so I feel bad. I think overall, I know when he was in testing, a lot of my testers did amazing, and I loved seeing all the little bears. In terms of technicality, I just feel like he's not up to the bar that I would normally set for myself when I am pattern writing. However, we do have to start somewhere, and so he was one of my somewheres, and so for that, I will always have a lot of love for him. Just might not be my favorite, and that's okay. And at number 19 is Pip, my cozy little penguin pattern. I spent so long on this pattern. I was so stuck, and I remember that I was having a really hard time with color changes and coming up with the way that I ended up doing the face, which is like you have the head and then you have a helmet piece. So in terms of how I figured out how to do the head so everyone's color changes were perfect, and then the vest and the hat, like I was so proud of that. At the time, that was about as far as my skills had gone, and for me that was a very technical pattern. Because I spent so long on it, I also started to low-key not like it. He's so cute, and so I feel bad talking about why they're not my favorites, because at the end of the day they all have a place in my heart, but super cute regardless. And so I feel bad putting him at 19, but he had to go somewhere. And so I think because I spent so long getting stuck on that part of the pattern, the longer you spend stuck on it, at least for me, the less I enjoy the process. And so I think that kind of has just stuck with me over time. But in terms of skill, he was a testament at the time to where my skills were sitting. And so I feel like in that regard, he gets kind of a pass because I'm like, the skill was there. But my own personal feelings on this pattern has kind of just muddied it for me, so that's why he's number 19. Much to everyone's dismay, I can already feel, my number 18 is Serena the Pumpkin Witch. I had come up with a series of 4 different patterns for Halloween of 2024. And so I think because I was like, I'm gonna do 4 patterns, I didn't spend as much time as I wanted on every single pattern. I mean, Serena, I did spend a lot more time than like Wisp, Poe, and Saluna. But I don't know, I just feel like she's very basic. She's just a little dragon, kind of like a normal dragon snuggler, and then she has a little hat, and then she just has a little pumpkin. Like, she's cute. And I know I'm gonna say that about every single one that I've written because I'm low-key biased, but I don't know, I feel like she's just a dragon, and so I feel like that's not that hard. In terms of technicality, to me, she's just a dragon, and so that's why I put her at 18, because I don't hate her, but she's just not, I think, some of my best work. And at number 17 is Saluna the little bat. I was kind of stuck on her wings when I was designing her because I was like, I really want to make a bat, but I want to do a bat in a way that I haven't seen before. She was the first pattern out of the 4 that I ended up designing for Halloween of 2024. So I remember the process, and I had a lot of fun figuring out how to do the wings and the feet, and like my version of a snuggler. I do love doing snugglers and half doubles, but personally if someone wants to stuff it with a half double body, then the stuffing pops out, and that drives me insane. So I was like, I'm gonna make a snuggler that can be stuffed or unstuffed, and it still works either way. So I remember doing the body in, I think, just single crochets. I feel like in terms of like technicality, she's basic, but she's super cute. I don't know. I might be biased. She might just be one of my favorites out of that set. So that's why I put her at 17. So coming in at number 16 is Ariel, the Merry Christmas Axolotl, I think is the name that I put for the pattern. She is a different version of Ariel, just my axolotl pattern. She actually came first. So I designed her in Christmas of 2024. And honestly, the idea for this axolotl was kind of the stepping stone between Bubbles, which we'll see later, and Ariswin. And I know that, like, last video I called her Ariswin. I forgot that that was the pronunciation. So, you know, when you come up with so many different names, you kind of, like, lose track of how to pronounce them. And I've also just been famous for mispronouncing things my entire life. So Ariswin, Ariel is in between both of them. So I had a lot of fun implementing like the little thighs and the little feet. And I remember getting stuck on her cape for the longest time. So I'm like, I want this shape, like this very specific shape. So I had to sit down and figure it out. But her little gills are so cute. I love her hat. Like everything about her is just super cute. I still really loved this pattern. This pattern was super fun. But the Christmas version is just kind of like not my favorite, but I don't hate her, so that's why I put her at 16. Coming at number 15 is Wisp. Wisp is honestly one of my easiest pattern designs, but I love the way that his little, would you call it a tail? The bottom of the body is kind of like curved. It was super cute, and I had a lot of fun with him, even though he's more of a smaller, more basic pattern. I think for Wisp, I kind of just knew what I was doing, and I kind of came into the project like, this is how it's gonna go and this is how it's gonna be. But he's just cute, and so like in terms of technicality, he is so simple. Still is one of my favorites just because of how adorable he is. So I think that is one of the last. We have one more from the Halloween pack. Halloween pack just in general for me is kind of low in terms of not being my favorite, but I do know that I love seeing everyone's versions of what they made from that pack. So while I might feel that way, you guys love it, and so that to me is all that matters. So coming in at number 14 is just baseline Ariel, the axolotl. She's so cute. I think this is one of my favorite axolotl patterns, but I'm also biased. I love axolotls, and so that's why I wrote 3 patterns. Feel like she's a little different than most axolotl patterns that are out there with the thighs and then the little arms. But she's more of like a baby style version. I've seen a couple people make her as a snuggler too, and she's super cute. But again, just biased. I love axolotls, and so I think this is when I really started to jump into my pattern designing of what I wanted in my animal patterns. And I think thighs and feet were really trending at the time too, so that obviously did an influence on my writing. But it was also me trying to figure out, like, here's the head for Bubbles. I think I kept the gills the same, or I changed the gills in Ariel, I'm not quite sure. But I really started to get that like frilly style that my axolotls have, and then I introduced the feet, because the feet on Bubbles was more of reminiscent of other like Amigurumi at the time. Kind of like the shift between Bubbles and Ariswin. So we had Ariel, and I just love her, so that's why I put her at 14. Coming in at number 13 are my Dino Trio 3-in-1 crochet pattern. I know that they're technically 3 different patterns, but since I market them as one giant pattern, I'm just going to include them here. I really want to, I think it was after I finished Ariswin that I was like, this would be a really good head for to mod and make into a dinosaur. So I think I made Stomps first, which is a little Triceratops, so cute. This is when I kind of started getting into the way that I write my patterns, and it's kind of weird. Started including incomplete rounds to make that like snout that I really liked, but without having to like really change much of my head design. And so for all of the dinos, they all have the same head, but then I kept my snuggler body, but I altered it for Nibbles so he was more long-necked. And then I think the only thing that I changed on Chompers, I didn't forget. Chompers is the stripes on his back. I think I just changed the count for that. I think out of the like 3 of them, I'm torn between Stomps and I'm torn between Chompers because they're so cute. But honestly, all 3 of them have my heart. I sent them to my nephew Enzo before he was Earthside, and so now all 3 of them are his best friends, and they sit on his bookshelf, and so that makes me happy. I actually got a cute little video of Enzo nibbling on Stomp's feet, and oh, my heart, it just is the cutest thing in the entire world. I kind of have a special place in my heart just because I really started to come into that style of writing that I now have in my patterns and kind of getting like bold and figuring out how I wanted to do it. That was kind of maybe not the mainstream way to do a head. And then because my nephew is the cutest thing in the entire world, it also just made it extra special. So coming in at number 12 is Petal, my baby bunny snuggler pattern that's free on my Instagram. I had so much fun designing this pattern, especially with how I wanted to do the feet. My goal here was to make like a bunny snuggler pattern that had not been done yet. I think it was around Easter time of last year that I had started to write and design her. So her little ears are my favorite. I love her little lollipop, and her little feet are just so cute. But I felt like it's like a fun little project. It's super fast. I'll have to sit down and make one, maybe for an Easter video, but I do love her and I love seeing everyone's different versions of her. I also just really love free patterns. I know that I have a huge stock of them on my Instagram that I have saved for when I am market prepping, when I am in market season. And so that was kind of like the whole point too, is I wanted to make a market-friendly Easter version of a bunny, but not like spend all your time, because I know when you're market prepping, it's super important to be able to get so much done quickly. I do love her. She is super cute, and so she does just have like a little bit of my heart, more than the last patterns that I've mentioned. But now we're starting to get down to like my favorites. So you can tell that this is when I really started having a hard time ranking them. So coming in at number 11 is Poe, my Raven snuggler. Poe is one of my favorites. I think actually my favorite that I made out of that entire Halloween bundle in 2024. So a huge inspiration for me in that pattern was I lived in Northern California. I had lots of trees in my yard, and so we had actually ravens that would fly through, and there was one raven that would always come back, and I lovingly named him Poe. And so Poe and I would, talk when he would land in my yard, and I just enjoyed it so much that I made a pattern for it. I was like, what perfect time, it's about a raven I love, and then Halloween was coming up. When I made the pattern, this is also kind of why I ranked them the way that I did. I forgot to write a tail because I was so busy doing all 4 patterns. So I recently just made an albino version of Poe with a little tail. I need to put that little mod out in case anyone wants to include a tail, but there's just like a sweet little story on Poe and why I ended up writing him that, and I feel like you can't get spookier than Edgar Allan Poe around this time. He was like, that is such a fitting name for a little raven. And so I just love him so much. He's just the cutest thing ever. But I think that story is what makes him a little more higher than the rest of the Halloween patterns. But he's just super cute. So now we're getting down to the top 10. So now it's gonna start getting really hard for me to stick in my convictions of why I ranked them the way that I did. But number 10 is Valeria, the Lovestruck Python. So I really loved this pattern. I thought, what is more of a whimsical way to make a snake than with wings? It was last year, so 2025 was Year of the Snake. Crazy year for me. I'm sure it was for everyone, but I actually had a drawing of my ball python Eden that I had drawn up, and she had wings, and so I was like, that would be such a fun way to elevate a snake pattern. I did not really want to do same reiteration of a snake as most of the patterns that were out, and so Valentine's Day was coming up, and I was like, what is a cute way than little cupid wings, and then little glued on like heart rhinestones is what I had used. And so I really loved watching her come to life, because she kind of was one of those patterns where she told me where she wanted to go and I just listened. Like overall, super basic in crochet skills, but she still is just so cute. That she is number 10 for me. And coming in right behind her is the other version of her that I ended up making and releasing. It was a free mod, so it's still on my Instagram, but it's for a chocolate covered version of her. And oh my gosh, my testers for this were troopers, because I think the final round count was at least 300, if not 500, for all of the drips. Like, it is a crazy, crazy mod. But I had a lot of fun trying to figure out how to put like a long drip pattern on snakes, just the shape of it all, and then how to do like the chocolate drizzle. I feel like there is a lot of room in this pattern to kind of do whatever you would like. Like, I made the chocolate version, I have made a cinnamon roll version that I really loved, so I feel like there's a lot of room for creativity. But that version of her has to be higher than normal Valeria, just because of how cute she was. And my testers did such a good job for putting up with me while I write such crazy patterns. But she was super cute, had a lot of fun with her. The testers did amazing. And then I don't know if I've seen a lot of variants of her yet, but I do know a lot of people have her saved. So hopefully next Valentine's Day, maybe I'll see more, or maybe I will write more Valentine's patterns. I love Valentine's Day, so this was kind of like my ode to Valentine's Day of 2025, but she ended up being really cute. So coming in at number 8 is Bubbles the Axolotl. Bubbles is so high because she is one of my favorites, just purely because she was the first pattern that I ever wrote. I had been testing patterns for other people for about 2 years. I've been crocheting almost 4 years this year, so like a year and a half. I'm gonna say year and a half to 2 years, but I had an idea in my head. I was like, I keep seeing this axolotl, but I don't know if I have the crochet skills to actually write a pattern. And so I sat down, I was like, you know what, I'm gonna just try. So I grabbed my skein of Sweet Snuggles Light, the pink one, and I sat down and I started to work on her, and she kind of just came to life all by herself. So she does have a very special place in my heart, just because she was my first pattern. I know in technical skills she's kind of like on the lower side, but I feel like that was when I really started to find myself as a crochet artist, or started designing. And so she's like really nostalgic for me now, especially because you can tell that I started to really experiment with the way that my faces were shaped, and so you can kind of see that early on in that pattern. So I think if it wasn't for Bubbles, I wouldn't be here. I'd still be crocheting, but maybe not as a pattern designer. And so I kind of have to give it all to Bubbles. She's just a little darling baby. Without Bubbles, I wouldn't have all the patterns that I do now. She's always gonna have a special place in my heart. And at number 7, I have a feeling this is what I'm gonna get a lot of pushback, is Safina, the water elemental fairy dragon. Safina was the second pattern that I had ever written, so I went from writing Bubbles the Axolotl to my 4-foot dragons that we all know me for now. Safina, I really was just having a blast when I designed her. I kind of talked about it in my last video. A lot of the dragon patterns at the time were laying down, and so I said, let's make a standing one, or like a vertical version. And so when I was making her, she actually kind of came to life all by herself in my head. I think I actually drew her out. This is when I actually started to write down my patterns, but also draw them out before I actually even started to crochet them. I think the one thing that I would change on her is her horns. I feel like that's so off-putting for a water dragon, but it's so iconic for her at the same time that I won't change it. So she'll keep her horns, but I really loved the style of the tail that I implemented into her. And then I feel like this is when my sewing kind of came together. A little bit of my whimsy got stuck in this pattern, and so for me, Safina was what opened a lot of doors in regards to my pattern designing, because I could see her in my head and she was very much like a real dragon. And so she just kind of came to life all by herself. But I feel like while it was a jump from my technical skills, she just is not, like, I love her to pieces, and she did so much for me, but I feel like there's just room for improvement. It is a pattern that I do go back and think about redesigning or revisiting just to see if I could change it. But at the same time, I'm like, do I really want to change her? Really want to start messing with that just because she's so loved as she is, and I think as artists we are our own worst critic. I feel this way about her. That's not really the sentiment that other people have. So she is number 7. In regards to Safina, like, I love her. She's great. I met my best of friend through that test. She's what really got me out in the community. But in regards to everything else, like, she is still in my top 10, but I feel like all the other patterns that I came out after her were better. She very much was like a stepping stone for me. But regardless, without my girl Safina, I wouldn't be here and I still wouldn't be writing patterns. So I gotta give her that credit too. Coming in at number 6 is Eriswin, my baby axolotl pattern. I love this pattern. I feel like I really started to grow into myself as a crochet designer, artist, and designer at that time. As you can see that I took the feet from Real and I changed it and I implemented the thighs, but just everything about her is so cute. I kind of wanted to do a snuggler, sitting on that idea since November of 2024. Just did not have the time to make her, and so the new year came and went, and I was like, this would be a great time to revisit this pattern. Since she has been my most viral pattern, I think I have sold over 2,000 copies of her, so thank you to everyone who has bought a pattern of her. But I've also loved seeing all the different renditions of Eriswin, and how beautiful and different. Like, I've seen some rainbow ones, and all the different themes have been so inspiring and so fun to me. Sprinkle version of my baby axolotl pattern ended up in Simply Crochet magazine's issue, which to me was crazy when they reached out. I was so excited. It was a huge thing, but I just love her. I love seeing all the creativity of when you guys make her and tag me and things. I know sometimes I'm the worst at keeping up on tagged posts, but I do see them all, and I always get so excited when I see it come up because I'm like, oh my gosh, look. And then I'll show my fiance, I'm like, look at how they made Eriswin in this color. I think that was one of the last animal patterns that I actually started doing before I started the Veiled Quartz. But she is just kind of an icon and a legend, and so that's why I put her on this list at where she's at. She's not like my best in technical terms, but she is the cutest, and I think is my favorite axolotl pattern that I have written to date. Do I know if I'll ever write another axolotl pattern? Maybe. I do like designing the animal patterns, but for me, like, my passion project has been the Veiled Quartz, and seeing where that goes and kind of how it develops. Maybe one day I'll return back to my roots and start writing animal patterns, but Eriswin is a cutie, and I love her, and yeah. In the top 5, and so I don't think anyone is going to be surprised that I ranked them this way. Number 5 is Sarah Lune the Near Fyra. She is the first pattern that I officially dubbed as the Veiled Quartz. Really when I started to flourish and blossom into my pattern designing skills and also just my technical skills in general. I had the hardest time making her. I actually made her 2 separate times because the body for the first one, this was actually my first toe dipping in the water of doll making, and so I had no idea what I was doing. I was like, I'm gonna figure this out. To remake her a couple times, especially with that, if you've made her, you know how the underside of the jelly cap goes. Oh my gosh, doing that 2 different times, not for the weak. I hated every second of it, which is so funny to hear about when you hear, I don't really hear a lot of people talk about their pattern designs, at least on Instagram, because it's more of like long form content, but that took me out. She also kind of paved the way for the rest of my patterns, because now I have my fae body that I like to use for all of the fae down to a science on how I like it, and I just change a couple things about it. But I feel like it's a very unique style, especially with the way that I did her eyes, and I just love all the little tendrils and tentacles. I feel like that really pulls the design together. I wanted to call back to Safina with all the little pearls. I think I made them a little different. They were more like iridescent, but this is really when quarter pearls started to come together for me, and these were like the very early stages of the Veiled Quartz, and so I had a lot of fun designing her because I was like, I don't like at the time it wasn't like a full-blown thing, but I was like, hey, you know, this is a really awesome way to tie Safina to this project. This is a really fun way to really get into this project. I had wanted to move away from making animal patterns. My heart wasn't in it anymore, and I just was not enjoying the process. Or I would come up with an idea and realize someone else had done it, and so it felt really limiting to me to be designing animal patterns in that way. Really, when I started to branch off and do my own thing, but I don't regret it. I have so much fun writing and designing the patterns now. I feel like this is really when I started to come into myself, skills that I had figured out up to this point, and I was like, here she is, and she is number 5, just because it was just a passion project of mine, and I just love her so much. If I hadn't made her, I wouldn't be here with all the different designs that I'm sitting on. Coming in at number 4 is Volcaris, my fire elemental fairy dragon. I love him so much. A lot going on this design, but this is when I was like, I'm gonna start mixing acrylic with my Chanel yarn, and I'm just gonna go for it. I don't remember how I did the horn shape, but I remember being so proud of myself after I had finished it. I really wanted that rigid horn look because as a fire dragon, I feel like you have to be more rugged. Especially with, I think this is when I really started getting into making lore for all of my elemental fairy dragons. So he came before I actually named it the Veiled Quartz. He came, I think, in... Oh god, I hope this is right. It was like fall of 2024 before I really started figuring out the Veiled Quartz and how I wanted that to go. But I feel like in technical terms, this is one of my best patterns. All of the moving pieces, I love the way that I did the horn, like the big horns, and then you have the little horns, and his ears are super cute. When I started to implement the belly pieces on my dragon, and I feel like that just shot up the design by so much. So proud of him. I still am so proud of him. So that's why he is number 4. So he's not necessarily my like most favorite, but I do love how he came out, and I feel like of all of them, he kind of is his own statement piece. I mean, they all are. They're all very different, but I feel like jumping from Etheria to Volcaris, or Safina to Volcaris, like you can really see that I started to get more ambitious, and so this was like my magnum opus at the time. He was just such a big project, but he ended up being so detailed. I think that is when I really started to fall in love with, yeah, it might make pattern designing a lot more longer for me, and testing might be longer, but when you have all of these different pieces, it helps tell the story on the plushie, and it kind of just elevates the design. So like now in my most recent patterns, I don't shy away from details. I don't care if it adds another week onto designing for me. I'd rather have that extra time and add those extra details than try to be a pattern factory and pump them out all the time, but lose the integrity of what I feel like are really realistic details of my designs. And so I think I spent about a month on Volcaris when I designed him, but I was so proud walking away from that, and I think that is still one of my favorite feelings, is when I do a design and I write a pattern, and then I'm like almost sad to move away from them and kind of move on to the next one, because it was so fun. And the group that I had for Volcaris, the testers, were amazing. Many different versions of him too, and I was just so inspired by everyone's creativity. So overall, it was just a really amazing experience that still sits with me, and so that's why I put him at number 4. Can't believe we're already at the top 3. So I can, because there was a lot to move through, but number 3 is Kylesia and Lumi. Kylesia is another pattern in my Veiled Quartz series, and this was actually the pattern that introduced the House of Starlight to everybody. And so Kylesia is a dream scout. She is in charge of collecting the wishes and dreams of the realm. Lumi is her little wishling, and that helps her with that. And I feel like the Veiled Quartz really started to come together with this pattern, because I had an inkling that I wanted it tied to Sarah Lune somehow. Came after Sarah Lune, so that's why I decided to put in the lore of Nearfira and the Dream Scouts working together. And so then Nearfira will take the forgotten wishes and dreams and turn them into shooting stars so that they can become like wishes and dreams and continue that cycle again. I don't remember a lot of the designing process for this because my fiance at the time was working grave shifts, and so I was crazy and I matched him on those, so I worked a lot of overnights. And I can't tell you how I figured out the hat and the shape for the hat. Like, there was a lot of I don't want to say solace, but a lot of peace making her in the middle of the night. Because when I had first designed Kylestia, it was about my wishes and my dreams as an artist, and where I was going with my crochet career at the time. And so I thought that it would be a really beautiful ode almost to the journey that I've been on and the things that I still want to achieve even now with this whole journey I've been on. So that's why there's a lot of really colors, there's a lot of lore in the pattern, and so I really feel like I figured out the doll part, which for me, I was like so scared. The doll making down, and then the hair I'm so proud of. I've actually never made a doll with hair, and so I think I spent 2 days figuring out how I wanted the hair done. The shape of the hat is one of my favorites. I think overall, just with her pattern in general, she's very aesthetically pleasing to look at. She, in just terms of design and detail, is just so detailed. And I love Lumi. Lumi's the cutest little guy ever, and so I feel like the pattern just really honestly speaks for itself. But I really found my niche in the doll making world, and so I'm really excited to keep using this Fae body and the Fae head and the way that I have it all figured out for future designs, and also even just taking that and changing it and kind of seeing where it goes. She is my second most recent pattern that I have put out because Alice is currently in testing. I just feel like she speaks for herself, and I feel like there's a lot of meaning that someone can find behind that design also. And so for me, like when I think of Pink Mew Crochet patterns, it's either the Elemental Fairy Dragons or her. That's why I put her at number 3. Being a number 2 and a number 1 spot was the hardest thing for me. These two patterns I feel like are just my favorite. I can't pick. At number 2, I do have Etheria, the Earth Elemental Fairy Dragon. I almost feel bad that she's not number 1. She has remained to be my favorite Elemental Fairy Dragon that I have made this entire time. Like, I made Volcaris, I was like, I love him, but Etheria is my girl, and I think it might just be because I really resonate with the design because I am an earth sign. Found a lot of inspiration in the world around me because I was living in California, so a lot of my trees had moss and mushrooms and just the nature of it all. So when I made Etheria, her lore was kind of like, she lives in this giant forest that's really hard to get into and you can get lost, and there's little mushroom fae that might trick you and send you running into circles. And so I think that for her, I really started to dive into my patterns before I even had made the veiled quartz. But her little branch tree trunks horns are like some of my favorite, especially when you put the little butterflies and the flowers on them. I don't know, something about her design, especially with her wings, just everything about it. Her gluing stuff on while I was still pattern designing and working, but I was like in the final stages. And I had glued down the mushrooms and the butterflies, and I walked away from her, and I remember being so choked up because I was like, how did I make this? This was my 3rd pattern I ever had written, and I was just in awe of the art that had come off of my hook. And so I think this is when I really started to fall in love with pattern designing, because and I can't even tell you, I think there was actually another version of her. She was gonna be pink. She had my fairy soiree eyes in her, getting more like cherry blossom themed. And so I ended up starting halfway through because I was like, I don't feel like this is a good representation of Earth or the direction that I wanted to go. And this is when I started bad habit. That's not really a bad habit, but I will just stop a project and restart it if I'm not happy with how it's coming out. I'm like, you know what? I got to this point. I figured it out. I'm not happy. So let me revisit it. Let me redo it in a way that I can release it and it does not bother me. Honestly, had I not frogged that first version of Etheria, then we wouldn't have Etheria as she is now. Just in general, I feel like she is one of the best plushies that I have ever made. I don't think anyone will ever be able to take her place. Like, as heartbreaking as it is that she's not my number one, she will always be, I think, my favorite out of the four. I have a different bond, but I have a lot of fond memories around Etheria. And that's why she is number two. Coming in at number one is Alistray, the Air Elemental Fairy Dragon. And I had the hardest time going between Etheria and Alistray just because I had a moment while making Alistray. I think I was sewing her together where I was like, damn, I still have it. Because the time gap between Volcaris and Alistray is about like a year and a half. I had stopped right when the series was gonna end because I just was not feeling very inspired. I felt like Volcaris had taken all of my creativity and want to work on this series if I wasn't really feeling it. So that's when I kind of branched out and started to do like the Christmas bundle and Valeria and Eriswin. Coming back to this series that I started when I was 24, I'm almost 26 now, and seeing how much I've grown as a person, how much I've grown as a pattern designer and just an artist in general. It was like revisiting the older version of me that started this series, but also still making a tribute to things that I have grown into as a designer, but also just as a person. It just reminded me that sometimes before we do end up being able to fly, we have to fall, but we still have wings and we can still pick ourselves back up and keep going. Still wanted to tie Alistray to Volcaris. I know Safina and Etheria have a lot of similarities. So with Volcaris and the Air Dragon, I wanted to do that without really honestly copy pasting the same dragon. Like Alistray's tail is very reminiscent of Volcaris's, but more in the shape of like an air dragon. Fucking wings. Oh my god. I cannot tell you how proud of those I am. I think that is the best part of it. That, the hair tuft, honestly her design in general, I feel like it is a blend of my older dragon patterns and the skills that I have somehow acquired that I actually had to tone down a lot of her design when I made it because I get too ahead of myself, and I still wanted her to look like she belonged with the elemental fairy dragons. And so she still has like Volcaris's horns. She has the baby horns from Etheria. She has the belly patch from Volcaris. And then the feathers that I used for the tail are kind of similar, but they're also a little bit altered just to have that same appeal. But she did just end up coming out really, really adorably, and I feel like is a good blend of where I was when I started the series and where I'm at now as a designer and a person. So when I was actually texting Cam and I said, I think this is going to be my favorite. Like, she might even dethrone Etheria. And then I finished her and I was like, yeah, unfortunately, my girl has been replaced. Still love all of them. I mean, without this series, like, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be designing patterns. I would not be so into the Veiled Quartz as I am now, because Safina is really honestly what started it all. Even at 24, I didn't know at the time that she was going to be the stepping stone and the milestone for where I'm at now. Alistray is my number one, and I'm sure if I make another video like this, maybe a year from now, the ranking might change. She is my favorite just with all the little designs, the wings, and the little heart pendants that I found for her since Joann's went out of business, and I did not have any more of the ones that I used on the original Elemental Fairy Dragons. I also love the lean into the gold instead of like the silver chains too. I feel like that really makes it pop because she's such a cool toned palette that the gold's like, hey, look at me. Alistray is my number one, and so far she is my favorite pattern to date that I have ever created. So that is my patterns ranked from my least favorite to my most favorite. I hope that you enjoyed the video and kind of hearing why I ranked them the way that I did and just kind of seeing what my opinion is. If you'd like, in the comments, you can let me know what your list of your favorite patterns of mine would look like. I think it'll be really fun to recreate this video maybe like a year from now and see what else I've come up with, how I feel, and maybe if my opinion has changed in that time. The video, please do feel free to follow along on my journey and subscribe and like and share if you feel like it is something that is worth sharing. I'm having a lot of fun so far making all of these videos, kind of just getting into more of what I love about crochet and all of this stuff. Just love having you with me. So thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.